The newest mid-range brawler, Griff, has just been added to the game. I think this brawler is pretty good, but for some reason, I have a really hard time explaining why. So today, I'm going to do my best to explain what he's good at and why I think he's so good. What's going on, Jam Fam, and welcome back to the gaming station. Yes, today we're going to go over my impressions of Griff while pushing him up to 500 trophies. I'll be honest right off the bat, Griff is a lot of fun to play, and he's probably one of my new favorite brawlers right away. Griff does a lot of things very, very well for a mid-range brawler, and there's only one or two things that I really have to complain about his kit overall. Okay, let's get started with the review, and we'll start with the basics as always. HP, attack, and super. So, at max level, Griff has 4,760 HP. This is tied with Colette and is like the middle HP amount for most mid-range brawlers. You don't feel squishy when playing Griff, and he does have enough range to keep himself out of harm's way when he starts to get low, but doesn't need to back out of a fight entirely. So personally, I feel like this is the perfect amount of HP for Griff. Okay, for Griff's main attack, he throws out 3 waves of 3 coins, each dealing 308 damage. If a target gets hit by all 9 coins, they will take nearly 2,800 damage, meaning that for most brawlers, if Griff gets into their face, he has the potential to take them out in 3 or less shots. However, the stipulation of this is that Griff has a very long unload speed. Without his first star power, it takes him a bit to throw out all the waves of coins for each attack. So in practice, I feel like Griff has very low burst damage when he's up close, but he has very high damage when he's in the middle of his range, since that's where you're going to land most of your projectiles and do the most amount of damage, a lot like the way you would play Tara in my opinion. Alright, moving on to Griff's super. Griff throws out a handful of banknotes over a very wide area, dealing damage going out and coming back to him. They act a lot like Carl's main attack, where they don't fly through walls on the way out, but when they come back, they'll fly through the walls. So you can throw them, duck behind a wall, and try to hit somebody on the other side of that wall. The banknotes deal more damage individually at their max range, capping out at 924 damage each. However, if someone's in Griff's face and he throws out his super, they'll get hit by all 5 banknotes, doing about 2,300 damage. That means that the super can be used for burst damage when somebody's up close to Griff, or for area control when somebody's further away. This is probably the best part of Griff's kit, and I actually have a really hard time explaining what's so good about it when you're actually in game. Since it does have big damage potential when up close, it does help him cover that one weakness he has. Like I said, he can struggle when people get up into his face because he doesn't have a ton of burst damage from his normal attack. But it's also very useful to zone out enemies from your lane or the middle of the map, and it has such a wide area that you can hit multiple targets at once more often than not. And because you can hit multiple targets multiple times, it actually makes the super very easy to chain, and when you pump out 2 or 3 of these, it's very easy to get full team wipes. In my opinion, this is probably one of the best supers in the game now. It's not quite on the level of like a Jean or a Tara super, but it's very close just because of the potential of you being able to chain it and getting team wipes from it. So, personally, I think Griff should be looked at as one of the best mid-range brawlers in the game, at least for a little while, because he has more HP than most of the brawlers in that category, and he has the massive damage potential and the very good super to pair with that. One bad thing about Griff is that his attack reload speed seems to be a little bit below average, so you do need to be aware of that if you're just spamming shots out quickly. There were a lot of times when I'd spam 2 or 3 shots out, and then I'd get rushed, and I didn't have the reload speed to get my ammo back and save myself, so that's one thing you need to be aware of. Like I said, you don't need to worry about it so much if you have a super in hand, because one super and one attack can deal like almost 5,000 damage, which can take out pretty much every brawler in the game except for tanks. But yeah, just try to be aware that Griff does have a lower reload speed and he doesn't have a ton of burst damage, so you can get yourself in trouble if you're just spamming your shots out. Gadgets and star powers. Okay, so Griff's gadget is called Piggy Bank, and it causes him to drop a piggy bank right where he's standing, and after a short delay, it explodes, dealing 1,000 damage to any enemy standing by it, but more importantly, it breaks walls. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of this gadget. The range is very small on it, so you basically need to be standing right next to the wall you want to destroy, and the delay is something like 3 seconds, which feels like forever in a match. So you're almost never going to use this for damage since enemies can just easily walk away from it, but even if they do get caught in it, they only take 1,000 damage, so it's basically like a pogo shot. But it can be used to open up maps a little bit, which helps Griff a lot because his super really shines on more open maps. Terraforming gadgets like Cold Silver Bullet, this, and Brock's Rocket Fuel are always going to be decent for utility, but of the 3, this is definitely the worst one because it's really only good for just breaking walls, where the other 2 can give you damage potential. Griff's first star power is called Keep the Change, and this increases Griff's unload speed by 35%. This sounds like a very underwhelming star power on paper, but when you play Griff's without it for a bit and then you get it, you instantly feel the difference. It makes the coin waves come out much faster, basically reducing the spread of them, making it easier to land more projectiles, which in turn makes you do more damage. Griff's second star power that isn't out yet is called Business Resilience, and this makes it so Griff passively heals a small amount of HP all of the time. Obviously, I don't have this star power right now, so it's hard for me to judge it, but honestly, it sounds pretty good to me. Between the two star powers, I think Keep the Change will be the preferred one since it's basically more damage, and that's what most people are going to prefer. But for non-aggressive playstyles, I think Business Resilience is going to offer great value. I think Business Resilience is going to be a lot like Barley's Medical Use star power, where you don't have to stop shooting to heal, meaning that you can keep yourself in fights for much longer without having to back out until you get critically low on HP. Good and bad matchups. Okay, time for matchups, and we're going to start with the good ones like we usually do. So, I think Griff does really well against most other mid-range brawlers because he has the damage and range to force them out of the lane very quickly. So brawlers like Tara, Colette, M, Sandy, and Nita will struggle when they're faced up against a Griff because he outranges them and outdamages them. The only stipulation of that is that if you're in a wall peeking fight, Griff will struggle in that situation because his unload speed is so long, you're not going to be able to get all your projectiles out before you're back behind the wall. Other brawlers that Griff does very well against are tanks, but only if they don't have a way of closing the gap on him. Griff will shred tanks as they walk up to him, but if they have a way of getting on top of him quickly, like a primo jump or a bull charge, they can outdamage Griff and kill him. So in this category, Rosa and Frank are the obvious ones to pick on since they have no way of rushing into Griff. And like I said, other tanks that have mobility supers you need to look out for when they do have their supers up. So Jackie with Gadget, Primo, Bull, Daryl, and Buzz when they have their supers are ones that I'd watch out for. You do well into them as long as they don't have that gadget or their supers up. So I guess this is a good segue into his bad matchups now. So aside from mobility tanks, I would say the next set of brawlers that Griff has a hard time against is actually throwers. Griff does have his gadget to break walls, but you actually need to walk up to the wall to blow it up, so you're going to need some fancy footwork to not take a lot of damage when you're getting there, and then you have to wait for the gadget to actually blow up to take out the wall. And yeah, you can possibly use your super to clip through the wall on the way back and hit them, but it's not likely to kill them, and there are better uses for Griff's super in my opinion. So overall, I think it's better to try to just avoid these matchups like Barley, Dynamite, and Sprout entirely. Another set of brawlers that I struggled with were snipers. When Griff is forced to land shots at his max range, he does like Shelly levels of damage, meaning a good Piper or Belle will just abuse their range advantage on you and just outdamage you. The main ones that gave me a hard time were Belle and Piper, but Brock and Nani can also be troublesome when they're played by the right person. And the last set of brawlers that I think really give Griff a hard time are some of the assassin brawlers. We talked about how Griff has a very long unload speed and he struggles in up-close fights, so brawlers like Crow, Edgar, and Leon, when they have their supers up, can jump right on top of Griff and give you a hard time. However, this is a situation you can play around if you have your super and one normal attack in hand. If you use your super and then your normal attack, you should be able to take them out. They might kill you, so the situation might end up being a wash, but that's the worst case scenario. Good and bad game modes. Okay, so to be honest right off the bat, I did about 90% of my Griff push in Brawl Ball, so I don't have a ton of experience with him in any of the other modes. But honestly, he is very, very good in Brawl Ball. He's great at defending the goal as long as you're able to chip the enemies down as they're approaching your goal. He can use his gadget to break walls by the enemy's goal, and his super is very overpowered when the game goes into overtime. I think Brawl Ball is easily Griff's best mode. For other modes I think Griff can do well in, I think both Heist and Siege as well. One of Griff's biggest strengths is his damage output potential, so being able to put that on the Safe in Heist or the Ike in Siege is a very good use of it. He can also shred the bot on defense in Siege, and his gadget's wall break can come in handy as well. The one thing that I would be wary about in Heist is make sure you're not playing him on maps that are favored by long-range brawlers. Maps like Pit Stop and Hot Potato would be best, but try to avoid ones like Safe Zone. Okay, for bad modes, I'd say the main one you want to avoid is probably Bounty. We talked about how I think Griff struggles when he's outranged, and since those brawlers are pretty much entirely the Bounty meta, it makes sense that you want to avoid that mode. I'd also say that Showdown is another place he'd probably struggle, specifically Solo Showdown. Now, I'm not super experienced with Showdown, obviously if anybody knows me, but with the bush camping in low to mid trophies and the primo parties at high trophies, I don't see Griff having a great time anywhere in that mode. So, what do I think about Griff? As I said, he's probably one of my new favorite brawlers as long as they don't nerf him into the ground. I do think he's a little overpowered though. There's really only two changes I'd really like to see, and one would be a small damage nerf to his main attack, and the other would be a slight rework to his gadget. In my opinion, I think his main attack should get nerfed down to 280 to 250 damage per coin. This would make a full shot deal between 2500 and 2300 damage, and honestly, I think that's more fair, and it would make it so other brawlers could compete with him for the mid-range spot. With him having the possible damage output he does have, it's hard to justify taking a brawler like Ems or Tara in my opinion. Yeah, their supers are arguably better, Tara's specifically, but when you compare how well Griff does when Brawlers get into the middle of his range, there's really no competition in my opinion. And the rework I'd like to see to his gadget is that it either explode a little bit quicker so you could actually use it as a knockback for when people jump on you, or make it do more damage. Right now, the only reason to use this gadget is for the wall break, since it takes way too long to use it if someone gets on top of you. If it triggered faster, you could take advantage of the knockback it has, and it would help cover Griff's weakness of his very long unload speed. Or if it simply did more damage, at least you could justify the long timer on it, as it would be a much bigger threat when you put it down, especially for melee brawlers that need to walk up to you. But other than those two things, I think Griff is a great brawler. So if you unlock Griffs, let me know what you think about him down in the comments. And if you didn't, let me know if you're opening boxes to get him, or if there's another brawler you'd rather have. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. I want to thank everyone for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.